Lesson 12, part 2. So we're continuing with our work on our Recaptcha integration into our register form. So we've now got Recaptcha loading properly on our form. We're now going to have to go and look at our server-side integration. So back from the link where we've got our keys, above our secret key, which is actually going to go in our PHP code rather than in our HTML. So I opened this server-side integration, so that takes us here. So we'll have a look at how this works, and then we're going to need to write some new PHP code we haven't written before to do this verification. So how does this work? So for web users, it says we have one of three ways we can access the response from the Recaptcha. The simplest one is using this g-recaptcha-response as a post value when the user submits the form. So this is going to be the easiest. We're going to use this. It also tells us the token is only valid for 2 minutes and can only be verified once. So you've only got 2 minutes to basically check if the response is valid. So we're going to have to make an HTTP request to the Recaptcha API site verify with the method of post. And we've got to pass in 2 required parameters. The first one is our secret key. So that's this value we generated in the console. The second value is the response, the user response token provided by the Recaptcha client side. So we're going to get that from a post field called g-recaptcha response. So we're going to send these 2 values in a hidden form post to Google, and the API will send us back a JSON object that looks like this. There's a key called success with a value of true or false. There'll be a timestamp, which we don't really care about, the host name, and if it's false, there will be some error code. All we're really interested in is this first value. Is the Recaptcha successful or not? Or did Google tell us this is a bot or this is spam? That's really all we're interested in. So we're going to go to our save register page and add the code to send the response to Google. And then we can evaluate whether that worked. So let's open up our save registration. And we're going to add this before, at the bottom of our current validation check. So right now we've got 3 validations, making sure our username and password are not empty, and that our password and confirmed password are the same. So now we want to add the Recaptcha validation. So we're going to set up a few variables. The first one is our API URL, which is equal to, and I can just copy and paste this right from the Google Docs. So our URL is right here. I'll put it in the chat. google.com/recaptcha/API/site verify. So that is going to be, I'm going to paste that in here. We're going to set up a variable called secret. And then we're going to go and grab our secret key from Recaptcha. I'm going to copy my secret key. It starts with a 6. I'm going to paste that in. So I've got the URL we're going to send to, the secret key, so our authentication. And then we also have to send a value called response that's equal to the g-recaptcha response in the form post. So now we will call the Recaptcha API using PHP's So we have a method in PHP where we can make an HTTP call, a hidden HTTP call. We can send an HTTP request to this URL without having to load that URL in our browser. It just happens programmatically in code. It's invisible to the user. So we're going to call file get contents. So we have to provide a path name, which is we're going to use these three variables. We're making a recall to this URL. Actually, I can do it in double quotes, easier. We're going to append on our secret and our response. So this is going to let us make a call to this URL, and we're passing in as URL parameters both our secret and the Recaptcha response. And let's just maybe print this out first. So we're going to get back, let's try it this way. We'll just say echo. And for now, we'll just say OK equals false. So we don't want anything else to happen. We'll just say exit. So we don't want to save to the database or do anything else. Let's just see what response we get back from Google. Okay. Andres and Sarah, Andres, I'll come back to your question. So Sarah, we are appending on, so the URL will be this full URL, but when we call the API, we have to pass in two values, right? The Google Docs say there are two parameters that are required. One is called secret, which is the shared key between our site and Recaptcha, and the other is the response. So this is generated by the Recaptcha on our form. It's auto-generated and submitted as part of our form. So to call the API, we have to send in both of these required parameters, secret and response. So the secret is our key. So that's identifying our site. It's like our way of authenticating. So Google knows which domain is sending the API request. So it wants to know which domain is sending the request. That's the secret. And the response is like the AI score from this little widget here. Does that help, Sarah? And then Google's going to take those two values and send back a success or a failure. Does this request from this domain seem like it's a person, or does it seem like it's a bot? Right, yeah. It's just like a get, right? These are the two parameters that Google says it needs. It needs a secret and it needs a response. Andres, are there limits? That's a good question. I'm not sure about that. Let's see. Guide. Talks about validating the names. Okay, here. Up to 1 million a month. Took a little digging. Okay, so realistically, good for most websites. Free up to 1 million requests a month. We get 1 million users signing up, that's fine. If we have to pay for it, at that point, we'll have enough money. So I'm going to try to register here, and then we just want to print out, we want to see what response we get back from Google. So I'm going to fill this out. You can put in any username and password. So here's what we get back from Google. Here's our JSON response. It says, okay, this is a person. It timestamps it. It says our host name is localhost. It gives me a score. So basically it scores us from like between 0 and 1.0. So 0.0 means, I think anything less than 0.5 means we'll get a failure. The Recaptcha says we're a bot. Anything above 0.5 will say that we are an actual human user. Now I'll also just show you the importance of the site key. So if I mess this up, let's say I put in an extra character here. I'll just put in an A at the end. I'm going to go back and do it again. See, now it says, no, this key doesn't match. Like there is no secret key. So I get back a false response in this case. Make sure I use the correct value for my key. So we can get back an API response it's in JSON format. So we're going to convert it from JSON. We're going to use Json Decode. Yep, 1 second, Daniel. The code, it's actually all on GitHub as well, but I will go back. So we're going to decode the JSON. Yeah, check it out there. And if you need to see mine, that's fine. We can look at it. No, Andres, it doesn't use cookies. That's why the token is only good for 2 minutes. I think it told us. It's a user response token, and it can only be verified once. So it can't be resubmitted. So now we want to evaluate. So if API, let's say, check, if API shows that it's a bot or a human. So the API will score the form attempt on a scale from 0 to 1. So if the score actually, whoops, I guess if it's greater than or equal to 5.0, sorry. In that case, we'll keep OK as true. If we don't have a score value, or the score value is not less than 5, we're going to set OK to false. So in this case, we're really doing nothing. I know this seems redundant because OK is already true. But if it fails if let's say the site key is invalid, we don't get a score. So we're going to do it this way. This should ensure. So now I'm going to go back. I should be able to register again. And I think we will be done. So go back to register. Okay, that's interesting. What happened here? Let's print it. Bear with me for a second. We need a message. We should print a message. Not quite right. What happened here? Maybe I better. Print that back out so we can see the response again. Let me try that again. Did my user actually get created? Well, I'm not quite sure. Check it out. I'm just going to go look in my database for a minute. Okay, it did not, so it did fail. So let's see what happened. We're almost there, but not quite. I'll try again. Could not be converted. Oh. Yeah, Sarah, there's no $ in front of score. It's just a property of the Recaptcha response. Gonna try that again. Just a little debugging. We're almost there. I may have to rewrite this logic just a bit. Okay, interesting. It gave me a score of 0.9, yet I still got this, are you human? So I think our logic isn't quite how we want it. Okay, let me rewrite this. I'm going to try it this way. We're going to say if the score is less than 5, whoops, 0.5. Let me try it like this. There's a couple ways. Okay, Sarah, we can look in a minute. I think I want to modify this logic. I'm just going to see if it works this way. Okay, so it does work this way. When I get true with a score of 0.9, it tells me my registration was saved, which it was correct. One small flaw, I'm not sure I want to keep the logic this way, however. If I do this, I'm afraid it's still going to save. So I think we'll need to rewrite the logic a bit. Okay. Right, so it crashes, there's no score when success is false. Maybe instead of the score, we can try it this way. Just say, so long as it's not successful. Yeah, Tyler, that's what I was thinking. I think I'm going to say, assume that it's an error unless we get true. I'm going to try it this way. Yeah, I think that's better. As long as it's not true. So now I can comment that. I'll just make sure that this actually works now. Yep, that's fine. Good luck, Andres. And now if I put in the proper code, this should work. Try one more time now. So a little bit of trial and error. We're working with third-party code. There, so now it says registration saved. So when I put in a proper key and Recaptcha scores my success as true, then it saves. If we don't get success back, we'll get a message, an error message, and the user won't be saved. So it can be tricky when we're working with APIs. I mean, I've worked with this one before, but Google keeps updating it. So we have to learn how to read the instructions and the documentation. And there's often some trial and error. We have to test it out and try different scenarios and check what kind of response do we get from the API under different conditions. But now we find that we've got it working the way we want it to. So we're passing our secret key and the response from our form, and we're interpreting what we get back. Do we get a success code or a failure code from Google? And this is one of the gotchas when we're working with APIs, is that they can also change. So we need to make sure that we are keeping our code up to date if we are making calls to an API from somewhere else. Now we've worked with two APIs, our little weather widget in our header. We've integrated Recaptcha now into our register form. We've looked at generating API keys, and most APIs will require you to generate keys that need to be used when we call methods within their API. We may also have to develop APIs ourselves. So for example, show you one that's fairly similar to what we're doing. So a service like Spotify, for example, has an API so that we can fetch data in JSON format from Spotify if we wanted to include that data in our own custom application. Could be web, could be mobile, could be anything. So Spotify, their documentation, it lists different methods in the API, whether they're get, delete, put, or post, and it shows us a JSON example. So here's the URL, here's the required parameters. So for example, if you want to get all the tracks from an album, you'd pass in the ID. And then it shows us a sample of the JSON response of what we might get back. So we can actually build our own little API that will show a list of movies in our database in JSON format so that these might be consumed by another program. For those of you in computer programming, in your Intro to Objects course, I think with Jarrett, you may have worked with building Java applications that consume JSON from somewhere else. So we're actually going to build our own little API. So I'm going to make a new folder in the root of my project. We'll make a folder called API. And inside our API folder, let's make a new file that we'll just call movies.php. So what this file is going to do is return a JSON object with all of the movie data from our database, much like Spotify might have, for example, this is music, but it might have, like a list of the albums for an artist in JSON format. Or actually, let's see. Maybe IMDb, the Internet Movie Database, it's got an API, right? So if we wanted to fetch a list of movies, like the top 250 movies, it's got an API where we would provide a key. We'd provide a language and a key, and it would give us a result, and we can even test this out. So we could see what the movie data looks like. Unfortunately, they didn't give us a key to test it. We don't have a testing key. So we were going to build our own. So put on PHP tags. There's no HTML on here. So first we will connect. Now we're inside our API folder, so we've got to go out of the API folder and into the includes. Actually, whoops, we'll write our query this way. Movies.star. So we're going to join our movies and genres tables together so we can also show the genre name. And I guess we can add an order by here. Order by movie title. So we want our movies showing in alphabetical order. We'll execute the query. But because we want to represent this as JSON, we're going to use a slightly different version of this. We're going to call fetch all with fetch assoc. So what it does is create an array that includes the column names, because we'll need those column names in JSON. So then we'll just print out, and we'll use JSON encode. We're going to convert the array, our query result, to a JSON object. Whoops, sorry. I got ahead of myself. We're executing the query. We're going to call fetch all in the format of an associative array. And then we're going to convert those results to JSON. So what this should show us is all of the movies in the database as a JSON object. I'm going to try it out and see if we need to change it. So to load this, I'll go to localhost /phpflix/API movies.php. Whoops, this is movies. So unknown column movie.title in order clause. That should be movies.title. So the name of our table is movies, plural. I'll just fix the change. And I made a mistake here as well. This is our foreign key, which should be our foreign key is equal to the primary key in the genres table. And now I get a JSON object showing all the movies and the names of the related genres. So fairly similar to what we might get from the Internet Movie Database. We want to fetch a list of movies. Is we've got it in JSON format. We could also modify our API so it could also, if we pass in a movie title, we could get it where it would show any movie with that title. Yep, sure. I really botched this part of the, Sarah, everything highlighted I had to change. This should be genre ID equals genres.genre ID. Or maybe, for example, we want to modify our API so we could also filter it by genre. So we can add an optional parameter to say, I want to see only the comedies or only the dramas. So we can add a parameter and say, if it's not empty, this will be the last thing we'll do. If we pass a genre as part of the URL, we'll initialize it to null. And if we have a genre, we then want to add a if we have it, we're going to rewrite this query. So I'm going to copy that. Just think about how I want to do this. I think we'll do it like this. We'll initialize our SQL. If we have a genre parameter, we're going to rewrite it. Because we'll need a where clause. Because that has to go before our order by. And then we'll add on we'll fill the parameter here. So if we've got a genre as part of the URL, so we'll need that where clause if we have a genre in the URL. So if we've got no genre, we'll see all the movies. If we have a genre as part of our URL as a parameter, then we will filter the movies and only show the movies in that genre. I'm going to save this and I'll try it first with no genre. I can just refresh. I get all the movies. But if I add genre equals comedy, now I only get 2 movies. I say genre equals drama. I get different data. So this is similar to how the IMDb API works. They've got oh, actually, they don't have that filter, although they've got it as a keyword, I guess. So this way we can get all the movies, or our API can get a subset of the movies if we want to add in a genre parameter. So this way we're making our movie data available in an API to other applications. Those applications can't connect directly to our database. They can't add, they can't edit or delete, but they can read our data. Let's say we want to build an iPhone app where users can rate movies, like Rotten Tomatoes. They can pull the movies from our API because we've exposed this as a web service where we will send JSON. And this is a public API, so there's no authentication. Anybody can use it. There's our completed code. So we're going to run our query. And all we simply do is create a JSON object and render the JSON. There's no HTML at all. Source. All we get is the raw JSON. There's no HTML formatting in our API. So we will work with APIs more next semester. We're also going to look at a tool to generate documentation, like we saw with Google, with Spotify, with IMDb. If we're making an API, we need to document it so developers of other applications know how to use it. What are the URLs they call? What kinds of requests can they make from the API? And what kind of responses do they expect to get back? So whenever we build APIs, we also typically will create documentation so that other developers can integrate their code and use our API. I'm going to upload everything to GitHub. We've basically done everything.